The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we have Scott Vasterling, founder of Humboldt Family Farms, on the show. Scott, welcome. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sara. I'm excited to see you as well.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I had heard of you before we met because we have many farmer friends in common, and everyone was like, you need to talk to Scott. And then we both serve on the California Cannabis Advisory Committee, where you are chair and I am vice chair, and we have a lot of work to do.
We certainly do.
But before we get into that,
I feel like it's getting better, but yes, there's always work to be done.
I know.
Never ending.
And I'm looking forward to geeking out with you on that. But before we do that, I want to ask you a question that I like to ask all my guests. What was your first cannabis experience?
That's a good question. I grew up in San Diego. And so my first experience was back in, I had a neighbor that was older than I was by about 4 years. And so I got to experience a lot of things at an early age. So it was probably in end of 7th grade, I think, is the first time I actually tried cannabis. But the first memorable experience was later in high school when we were, still smoking not the best quality product, but it was some product that was actually brought down from the Emerald Triangle, and it was that original train wreck. And I remember it vividly. And we were actually using ice blocks, and we were using them to fly down at this park, Presidio Park in San Diego. And you sit on the ice blocks, and it's just like a sled down the hill. And I remember the belly laughs and things. It's still one of my favorite things, about cannabis is it's the high. I don't really like to get stoned, but I like that I'm a sativa guy also, but I like that high energy feeling, just a little bit, not a huge amount. Like I said, I don't like to get super stoned, but it's that high. That's probably my first experience. And then I used it a lot, through high school. I would use it for a lot of times, just a little bit for sports, whether it was surfing or soccer games. And it's one of those things that, at that age, especially in that era, came in between my dad and I. And fortunately, years later, Prop 64 passed, and it was actually a way that my dad and I were able to kind of see eye to eye on the cannabis side. Now that it was legal, even though medicinal use and Prop 215 for many, many years, but it wasn't until Prop 64 passed that we were actually able to see eye to eye on cannabis. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing with that. I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and they have a very similar conversation, because as we start to see it be allowed legally, more people get curious. And then stigma kind of goes. Like for me, when I got into cannabis, it was right after cancer. So I had the get out of jail free card with my family, where they're like, oh, she just survived cancer. She's having a crisis. We'll just let her have some fun, and she'll come back around.
Yeah. That's one of the things too, I think, you bring up a good point, because I think that there's a lot of conflict right now between cannabis and hemp. And kind of in my opinion, we're talking about normalizing this plant. I think that's so important for people to realize, like, this is not killing thousands of people, right? And I think that hemp is kind of this little bit of a Trojan horse to be like, wow, I can go and buy a beverage at a place that I already trust, whether it's, at ABC Liquor or Bevmo or Specs or one of those other, and they have a positive experience with the beverage. And I think it stirs their thought or their interest in, like, okay, what else about this cannabis plant? Because I'm having such a good experience. It's helping me and we're seeing significant reductions in alcohol consumption, especially in certain demographics. And a lot of it is due to cannabis. And so I think we're kind of in this wave of normalization that I'm super excited about, coming from the historical perspective that we do here, in the Emerald Triangle and Humboldt specifically. Yeah,
well, it's when beverages first came out, some of our more heady friends were like, oh, this will never fly. Like, nobody's ever going to get this. But they weren't taking into consideration the part of the population that maybe is afraid of edibles or doesn't like to smoke for whatever reason. And it kind of went back to when I worked in retail and I used to do trainings with staff, and I would talk to them about discussing with our visitors or consumers the things that they liked, like encouraging people to purchase formats that they're familiar with, because that's where the conversation starts. And beverages is a very familiar format for everybody, whether it's euphoric or not. We all drink liquids, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, this was really nice. Maybe I should try a gummy. Or, and it goes on and on and on. It's like, even when we would talk about topicals, which I used to jokingly refer to as the gateway drug, it's like, it's completely non-euphoric. Then they're going to be curious about other things. But I always tell people, if you don't like salves, get a lotion, like get something that you relate to, that you'll enjoy using, because no one likes a full junk drawer.
And I think it's very, it's much more socially acceptable too. Right?
Absolutely.
I think there's no, you're not impacting others around you by having a beverage in the way in which, if you were to light up a big hash hole or something like that, you're impacting the people that are around you at whatever experience or wherever you are. But a beverage, it's like a social norm now that someone's drinking a beverage.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's an excellent experiment. And like, going back to, you're talking about hemp and cannabis, what we're seeing in places like Minnesota, where you can go to a restaurant or a bar and you can order a hemp beverage. Because when we were getting into legalization, one of the biggest conversations that we were having was, how do we combine the social aspects of alcohol and cannabis? Because people who consume alcohol and people who consume cannabis hang out together. So how do we create a safe space to be able to do that? And everyone's kind of like, oh, people are going to get drunk. They're going to get crossfaded. It's going to be horrible. And it's like, well, what we're seeing in, Minnesota is that's not the case. It's like, people are choosing one or the other. They're being discerning. They're learning more about it. I would really be interested to see like the staff feedback on that. Like, do they feel like they have to, educate their consumers on it? Do they feel like they have to watch people more? Because it doesn't seem like it. So when people are all frightened about hemp, there are two things I say to that. One, it's been an excellent proving ground, especially about the fact that maybe we need to regulate cannabis a little less, and we just need to test hemp more. And, really like looking at lowering just all of the constraints that we're seeing with legalization, and the fact that hemp and cannabis should be working together, because the sheer lobbying power that we would have if we would do that would be a game changer.
Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point, and that is that it is, I think we will meet in the middle, because it is, right? It's the same plant.
Right.
It's different strains of the same plant. And so I think that we will see a loosening of cannabis regulations, but a tightening of those hemp regulations. And I think that as it normalizes, again, people are going to realize that there are a lot of different qualities in there also. I mean, you're going to have some products that are the cheapest inputs possible, right? And then there's going to be elevated products, across the supply chain, the same way that there is in restaurants or something like that, right? Like,
oh yeah. Or you walk into a corner store and you see, and I don't like to make the comparison, I always say this about alcohol and cannabis, but you see everything from like Johnny Walker Blue Label to those crazy little like cocktail balls that you see in the freezer.
Like fireballs, like little fireball shots and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like, well, depending on where you're at with, the type of things that you like to consume, as long as it's all safe, that's all that really matters.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that that's something that, with regulations, I think that that's going to really clean up the hemp industry, because, there's, and in cannabis, where there's such strict regulatory testing, as we know. And so we can feel very confident with the products that are in the supply chain. But some of the stuff people are getting at gas stations and stuff that have very little testing or oversight by health departments or anything, there are problems. I mean, it's well documented. And I think that, meeting in the middle, to your point, and joining forces over the magical powers of this plant and the benefits that it can provide, whether it's medically or socially, recreationally, whatever that is, I think is something that I honestly never thought in a million years that we'd be where we are now back when I was a kid, right? Like even in high school and going into college. I mean, I remember I wrote a paper my freshman year in college, and it was about legalization of hemp and cannabis. And I still have the paper downstairs. In fact, I saw it not too long ago. But to see now, like where we are and what the future holds, I think, there's a movement like this doesn't come easily in any industry. And something that has been federally scheduled as a Schedule I drug for so long, and the fear that our government has put into people's minds over the generations is something that it doesn't happen overnight to convert those people. But I think hemp, as we mentioned, is starting to break that barrier and make people realize, like, hey, this is actually a lot of fun. Like, I actually feel better the next morning versus having a couple of cocktails.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're incorporating it into daily life or sleep or, whatever that might be.
Yeah,
I mean, it's funny to think there was first it was like CBD, right? CBD was the first big thing, right? And then everyone's like, oh, CBD and hemp and all that stuff. And then, now it's, the THC, hemp-derived THC and,
Humboldt Family Farms is rooted in the legendary hills of Northern California, where cannabis isn't just grown, it's lived. As one of the top sun-grown cannabis brands in the state, Humboldt Family Farms represent a collective of multi-generational family-run farms deeply committed to sustainable practices, environmental stewardship, and the craft of cultivation. Every harvest reflects decades of knowledge and a deep respect for the land, the plant, and the people who enjoy it. Now, they're partnering with Surfer Magazine and Embark for a first-of-its-kind collaboration, the first time in Surfer's 65-year history that they've ever partnered with a cannabis brand. The drop includes Humboldt Family Farms' iconic Maui Wowie flower and Hawaiian Fanta pre-rolls. You'll find the collab exclusively at Embark locations across California, and a limited number are dropping as part of Embark's weekly Getaway Bag series, a fresh tote every Friday packed with California's best cannabis. And it sells out every time. Embark has earned its place as California's most trusted cannabis dispensary, but they're not just selling cannabis. They're creating experiences that connect people to the plant and proving that it can be a force for good. They're pioneering what normalization looks like, bringing legal sales and consumption to places no one thought possible, like the California State Fair and Cali Roots. This summer, they'll do it again at Dead & Company's 60th anniversary in Golden Gate Park, followed by their 5th year at Outside Lands, with Humboldt Family Farms right alongside them. Every Embark location gives back 1% of sales to its local community, helping fund youth drug prevention programs and logging thousands of volunteer hours across California. A collaboration like this with Surfer Magazine and Humboldt Family Farms is an extension of this mission. It proves that cannabis can exist in mainstream culture, that it belongs in iconic spaces alongside one of the most demanding sports in the world. This is what progress looks like. For more information, visit Humboldt Family Farms at HumboldtFamilyFarms.com, Embark at GoEmbark.com, and Surfer Magazine at Surfer.com.
It is fun to watch it. Yeah, I mean, we went from, my big fat Greek wedding, spraying Windex on everything was the equivalent of CBD to everything that we're seeing now. Now, the thing that I would like is I don't have any problem with euphoric hemp products. I just want to make sure that, I just don't know if I'm a fan of the synthesized cannabinoids. It gives me pause. It's it kind of reminds me a little bit of how early in the 215 days you had guys doing butane extractions and blowing their noses off. And you would open up the container and you'd smell the butane and you're like, this has not been well purged. This is just a little shady. I feel like as we jump into markets and people look at something as the next green rush, they aren't necessarily taking a thoughtful approach around safe access. They're just looking at what's the angle.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, I agree. I think there will be some regulations put in place to help protect consumers, which is, I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
Volatile gases and things like that are efficient and effective and cost effective, and it can be done in a clean way. But when there's no regulation over, unfortunately, the residuals are no joke sometimes, to your point. I mean, even still, you can, and pesticides also, the way in which the plant is actually cultivated. And I think that there are some oversights in the hemp industry that I think in the legal cannabis industry, I think regulations are doing a pretty darn good job. Of course, there's some things that slip through. We hear about it almost daily in the press, right? I mean, it does make a good story. And there's always people trying to work the system for a financial benefit. I think that's just kind of the almost the American way, right? Like,
yes,
I hate to say it, but it kind of is.
It kind of is,
especially nowadays. And so I think I think it goes back to like just for each person is kind of take ownership of what you're consuming and the products that you're supporting. And I like to say vote with your dollar, right? Every day. And it's like, you can vote every 4 years, or you can vote with every single purchase you make with your dollar by supporting the companies and the things that you believe in. And that has way bigger impact, I think, as a whole, than, checking the box every 4 years.
Yeah. Well, and I think having the real balanced conversations too really helps, because it's not about demonizing anyone or anything. It's about accountability and showing up in a way that's good. I mean, like, even in the cannabis industry, like we were going a little too far, I think, on like, it does everything. It cures everything. It's amazing. It's like, well, let's talk about the positives, and then let's let people know things that they should be mindful of. Sure. Like when we were getting into CBD and everyone's like, CBD is great. It doesn't get you high, but it does all these things. And I'm like, okay, not everybody's built to metabolize CBD, and some people are sensitive to it, and it has drug interactions. So let's not make it scary. Let's unpack it. Like, let's be good stewards of the plant, so that, that we don't have that moment where someone's like, no one told me that this was going to happen. Oh, you guys are all crazy. Yeah, see, it's exactly what we thought. So let's pull it all back.
Right. Well, and I wonder if historically, because of Proposition 215, if that's kind of part of the reason why people maybe think like that. I mean, I remember going to get my prescription and they go, all right, point out which things are wrong with, it's like you have a whole list of all these ailments.
Right.
And they're like, pick which one you want to use, and I'll write it on your little script that cannabis helps it. And you're like, I don't know, hangnails, muscle spasm. I mean, there's like a whole variety of things that, and I remember those days where there was, the physicians that would write scripts, hand over fist.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Now it's, they still have it. I mean, they're still, but now it's, Dr. Nug or something like that. It's not, local doctor. But it's interesting because, when you talk to some of those doctors now about how, a lot of them were, they were in private practice, or they were working for medical systems, and they had to give up their DEA license in order to prescribe cannabis.
Yeah.
So, and then in order to go back and get your DEA license again, there was a lot of challenges with that in the medical world. And I think, with Prop 64, I think, that there are a lot of patients like yourself, and you've shared not only today, but over the times that we've met, the medical benefits of cannabis. And I just hope that with this regulation that we don't forget about these medical products and the medical patients, because it is truly what originally the intention of Prop 215 was, to support patients that have ailments. At that time, a lot of it was in San Francisco, as you're very familiar with the AIDS population, and a whole variety of other ailments that cannabis can support. So I hope that, we continue to do research on this plant as it becomes more normalized, and it's used as an aid to help people live a better lifestyle, whether that's, medically or physically or emotionally, whatever that is.
Yeah. I mean, there's, we got into legalization. I think a lot of people, their ideas were, oh, everyone's going to be coming in, getting high. It's going to be crazy. And it's like, well, as somebody who was, I actually sold the first product at my store on the first day of legalization. So I'm now stock footage. Every so often I'll pop up on the news. You'll see me from like how many years ago. Yeah. But it's, the one thing that I noticed was, there were people that were very excited about not having to talk to a doctor and get a recommendation or wait for their guy anymore. To, get some flour and be able to kick back and smoke. But there was also this swath of people that were using it. They were curious about, hey, will this help with, help me sleep better? Will this help with anxiety? Can I use a topical to help with some sort of discomfort that I have? And not having to have that conversation with their doctor to get the recommendation. Because even though you and I know that there are those docs that were like, yeah, so what is it? Like, yeah, all right, to the recommendation. I know for myself, like even when I got my card, I waited until I knew I had to go through chemo because I had no idea. I thought it was going to be a really serious conversation. And being a nurse's child, like having a healthcare professional family, the word drug seeking behavior was very prevalent. They're like, watch it. You don't want to be that person, so you're like, oh, well, I'm sick. So of course I'll get my card now. And then later on you find out this was not a big deal at all.
Yeah. What's interesting still though, is that there are still, some of these challenges, like, it wasn't too long ago I had surgery and they prescribed me pain medication, an opioid, after my surgery to get me through for the next week or so. But they also drug tested me. And of course I tested positive for cannabis. And my doctor said, unfortunately, this health system will not allow me to prescribe any scheduled drugs to you because you tested positive for cannabis.
Wow.
So in the future, if I was to have another surgery, that's like now in my medical chart. And I think that's something that is overlooked, because that's something that I was like really taken aback by was, if I need a pain medication to get me through a period of healing or whatever, because let's be honest, like there's a synergistic effect by a whole bunch of different, each of us are individual. And sometimes people need pain medications or other scheduled drugs to help them through a traumatic event.
Yeah.
But the fact that that's not available to me through this particular health system, which is nationwide with, especially on the West Coast, I was like, I was kind of amazed by that we're still dealing with that, in a state that it is legal.
Yeah, especially when you take into consideration that, cannabis has been an amazing harm reduction tool for people who actually don't have good relationships with pharmaceuticals. Like that's when I got the resectioning of my colon before I started chemo, I was on Norco after that. And being on it for 2 weeks, when I had to take myself off of it, I very clearly felt the way my body was uncomfortable not having it after only 2 weeks. Yeah. And being able to use cannabis to help with that was amazing. And I'm a person who, in my early 20s, when I was younger, back when smoking wasn't such a big deal, I smoked cigarettes and my doctor was like, you need to quit. And I just quit. And my friends were like, that's insane. Like you were just able to do that. And it's like, I've always had a very non-addictive personality. And then having been on opiates for 2 weeks, understanding like the gravity of it's not my mind, it's my body that's gotten used to this. And how do I transition out of that? Being able to use THC, having people use cannabis will not make them have bad relationships with pharmaceuticals. Is actually quite the opposite.
Yeah, I think we've all seen the decrease in opioid use when states legalize.
Right.
And so that number is always very interesting to me. And I think that's a powerful message. Because opioids are killing people daily. They are. And cannabis is not.
No, it's not. And it's getting people off of, benzodiazepines. And as research is showing, if you have an extended use of benzos, your predisposition to having dementia later in life skyrockets. Yeah. So how about instead of using, Xanax, having a nice 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC, that's not going to do that and actually could behave as a neuroprotectant.
Yeah.
It's that whole, we have a lot of work to do around normalization, but I think, something that's really exciting is in California, we're starting to do, we have our first The first state-sanctioned, government-sanctioned cup in the world is in our state. And that's super exciting.
That is super cool. Yeah. Yeah. With the state fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was last year, I think was the first year that they had both on-site sales and consumption at a state-sanctioned event at the California State Fair. And yeah, I thought it was a fantastic event. I'm looking forward to it this year too. I think it's going to be even more enhanced now that we saw the popularity of it. I loved watching people's reaction, because it was right in. I mean, the engagement was right in the center of all of the other art and everything. And so people walking by and they'd see the cannabis sign. It's like, wow, like here, and and people would come in and were just, it was people that were cannabis curious, people that had had been anti-cannabis. There was people that were huge. It was a whole variety of people, hundreds of thousands of people over the course of that 20 days or so. And we were there for 10 days with Humboldt Family Farms. And it was an incredibly positive experience to be able to talk to people and hear people's experience and histories and beliefs and thoughts about cannabis, and just really opening the dialogue across many, many different demographics all in one place at the state fair. And, not in a pushy kind of way, but it's like, if you want to try product there, it's available and you can consume it, then go ride roller coasters if you want. I mean, I thought it was a really cool place. And, and Dustin and the Embark team, they pulled it off what I felt seamlessly. I thought it was very well done, and I'm glad that they're doing it again this year.
Yeah, I'm glad they are too. I feel like it's also a big step in, maybe it's not being straight out said, but acknowledging cannabis is a very important part of our agricultural framework in this country, in this state.
Yeah. I remember people talking about how big the agriculture was with cannabis compared to some of the other, like almonds and all that stuff. And I can't recall, but I remember it being significant. Like it was on the list in California.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, historically, like I remember being in Michigan and having a friend, have a little bag of something. And it's like, oh, this is from California. This isn't that crap that you've been using. And like moving here, even like going from, I don't know, a mixture of like Midwestern swag and Midwesterners out there. I know you grow good weed. Don't get me wrong. Between that and like Mexican brickweed growing up, where we get rolling trays now. Those were cleaning trays.
Right. Yeah. Get the seeds out.
Yeah. And then coming out here and the cannabis being a little more expensive, but also like it lasting longer and being better. And I was like, oh, I get it now,
Yeah. And I think California is an ag state.
It is.
And, the Emerald Triangle in particular is an incredible terroir appellation for cultivating cannabis, clearly having supplied a huge percentage of the cannabis across the country, and there's always there's a place for indoor cultivation, especially when we're talking about medical and some other people that just prefer indoor. But I think, the thing is that, indoor can be anywhere in the world, right? Mm-hmm. You just have to build a building and you completely control the environment. So there's, in my opinion, there's nothing really crafty about it. Like, with Sungrown, and why I'm so proud to represent the Sungrown community is it is truly watching these farmers navigate what Mother Nature provides day in and day out, right? And it's that art of managing those plants throughout an entire season, rain and hail and 100-degree temperatures and all that stuff. And some of the farmers we're working with have been doing it for generations, like Nick over at Full Moon Farms. He's truly one of the best farmers, in my opinion, up here in Humboldt. He's been doing it since, he was a little kid. He doesn't know anything other than growing amazing cannabis. And he continues to do that to this day. And I'm super honored to be able to share his products with the consumer base, and Amy Newcomb, food farmer, right? 90% food farmer at all the farmers markets, the longest line for her peaches and tomatoes. And she also cultivates amazing craft sun-grown cannabis. And so it's fun to be able to promote those through, these farmers through a supply chain. Wes at mom and pop farms also, just long histories of cultivating cannabis up here in this region at a very high quality. And so it's, makes my job a little easier, I guess, getting it through supply chain. I help navigate the business side of it, but it's an honor to be able to support farmers like those.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, all the different microclimates make the growing a very nuanced thing. And for those of you listening out there, you hear me talking all the time about how I love sun-grown cannabis. There's, when we look at, comparing it to grapes, like I had a very famous grape cultivator on a couple years ago, and we were having a conversation about how environment changes the expression of the plant. And it's the same thing with cannabis. Yes, you can get some really beautiful indoor grown cannabis, and especially when you're in areas where outdoor is not an option, it's a great thing to be able to have available. But when you look at like terroir and the fact that all these environmental things, when you're doing outdoor growing, the stress on the plant and all of that creates all these beautiful terpenes in the way the plant expresses itself. It can be just such a fuller, more nuanced experience, especially because, we have all this misinformation about the race to the top for THC, but that's not really, that does not embody the experience of cannabis. We need to have more conversations about that.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
I agree with you. It's the race to the highest THC has been a really interesting conversation because, historically, I think the goal is to provide a positive experience for someone that is consuming cannabis, right? Yeah, like you don't want them to be, white knuckled to the grass, not want to talk to anybody. It's like, there's a time for, that very, sedative vibe with cannabis. But for the most part, if you're, especially in a social situation, you want to bring a positive vibe. And I think that a lot of those older school strains, a lot of them had CBD in it because, as you mentioned, there's like that synergistic effect of all of these cannabinoids. We have a couple of products that we've released and blends and kind of bring back a positive experience rather than just chasing THC. In fact, it's funny, just this week, we had a product, it's called Lemon Lime, and it's a sour lemon mac with a key lime jack. And I blended this into a pre-roll. It's a 50-50 pre-roll from Nick over at Full Moon Farms. It's one of his favorites on the farm. And we, did the R&D and everything. And it truly was everyone that tried it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? Well, we got the test results back and it had over 20% total cannabinoids, but only 16% THC. Terpenes are over 2%. The effect that people get from that is way heavier than something that people are saying are testing at 30% plus.
Yeah.
And so and that is exactly the point of this synergistic effect of all of these cannabinoids and terpenes, providing each individual person with their own cannabinoid system that experience. And it's something that I'm super excited to drop here over the course of the next couple of weeks. But that's my point. I think people need to start looking past a THC percentage and start looking at, well, what else, like the intention behind this particular blend or this particular strain or whatever, and what the total cannabinoids are in this plant, because it's really interesting. So a lot of those ones that are testing at 30+% THC is like, it's 30% THC, but it's less than 31% total cannabinoids, right? And so there isn't as many of that synergistic effect as you would have with some of these lower THC products. And I think that people, now that, the market is maturing and people are becoming more educated, I think once people try those products, I think they're having such positive experiences. What we're seeing is that they're coming back to them over and over again. In fact, we just dropped a 1-to-1, THC to CBD flower with our Cherry Sue. And it's incredibly popular because it's a super social, good vibe, but doesn't get people the anxiety that sometimes high THC strains can give people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot for those of us who have been consuming for a while. It's like, I remember, when my husband Jeff and I first got together, and his biggest complaint was, the stuff that's out now is just so strong. Like, I don't even know what the deal is. And it's like, well, because of a lot of the things that were going on with, the stigma around cannabis and the availability, we were, with the indoor breeding, we were breeding a lot of those other cannabinoids out. We were, it's like, how much bang can you get for your buck? And now, but the stuff that we grew up with was more balanced because we hadn't gotten as far with like the indoor cultivation and selective breeding and all that. You were working with the seeds that you had. They were, maybe not original land races, but they weren't too far off from their origins. And so you were seeing the plant the way nature intended. And now, I feel like we're going back to that, though. We're having more conversations about that because in order to draw people in, and I'm not going to yuck someone's yum. It's like, if you like something that's like super high octane, like, knock yourself out. I don't want you to not have it available. But the majority of people are looking for something that's more nuanced. They do like to have like a little bit of a lift, and they don't necessarily want to get sky high and like dive into the couch. I mean, I think I had the luxury of, working in retail for years, especially around the 215 days, becoming very familiarized with a lot of cultivars. Like, I remember, this is like J27, which was like a Jack Cross. It was, and at the time that was a high octane indica dominant cultivar. And it was like in the, like between 22 and 25% THC, which was a lot then. But what we found was, for a lot of the patients that were using it medicinally, it was great for, pain. It was a great analgesic, but it actually wasn't too stony. Like, they said, it was really functional. And then you'd get something in like your 13% or what have you with a really interesting terpene profile. And you're like, wow, I'm high. Like, this is, I really feel this. And to be able to have those conversations, especially with the public, like, hey, figure out what terpenes work well with your body. And it's like, I know it's kind of like back in the day of when people used to say indica versus sativa with me, and I'd just be like, shut up. You're just being an idiot. Like, I would just be like, oh, so much about it. And then you start to realize, you're like, well, actually there are differences, and you should be aware, maybe not indica versus sativa, but you should understand the cultivars that work well with your body, because when you start to encounter flowers that you're not familiar with, if you can find out the genetic makeup, it can help you actually determine whether that might be something good for you to experiment with. But I digress, because I wanted to pull back into how you got into Humboldt Family Farms. And, for some people, they might think that you put out all the flower, but it's actually more of like a collective co-op in many ways. So would you let our listeners know a little bit more about that?
Sure. No, thank you for asking. It's a collaboration. Here in the state of California, it's pretty challenging with having a formalized co-op. They limit you to 4 acres of cultivation, which sounds like a ton, which it is when you're looking at cannabis. But when you look at a scalable model long-term, to form a formal co-op was a bit challenging when you don't have those restraints in any other agriculture. And so, my wife and her family, they had a cafe up in Trinidad. If anybody's been to Humboldt, it's a beautiful little coastal fishing village up in northern Humboldt. And And so this cafe, the Beachcomber Cafe, we were sourcing from these amazing farmers. And Humboldt Family Farms was our food farm that supplied the cafe. And we were creating a menu from these amazing peaches and tomatoes and produce that we're getting from the farmers. And so as we kind of started to transition into a regulated cannabis market, we kind of took that same concept and we decided to use Humboldt Family Farms as the platform, not for us, but on behalf of our community of farmers that don't have brands on the market, that we can tell their stories, their legacies, the culture, the how they're involved and how what they've done to help support this cannabis movement for some of the generations, really. And so we create a menu through Humboldt Family Farms, and we source cannabis from, I think we've got 6 farms currently that we're currently working with up here, and just help them get through the supply chain. That's one of the biggest challenges is selling wholesale. And, we've got all kinds of challenges here in California, as I'm sure everybody's heard, with, everything from burner distros and high taxes and, retailers not paying the distros and things like that. And so there was a lot of challenges with supply chain. And so we decided to kind of help create this platform under Humboldt Family Farms to kind of help navigate some of those challenges. And it's been really efficient and effective. And it's given us a scalable model to compete with some of the largest brands in the state of California currently, because we just add on a farm as we need more product. And we're moving through product, and the farmers get paid upon COA, which is also more of a traditional ag model when you're participating in those things, and the farmers love it. I tell everybody who the farmer was on the product that they are consuming or purchasing, and I'm really proud of that. But it also allows us to select some of the highest quality products to put into the packaging because we are putting their names to it, and there is still that energy or that I hate to say ego, but it's people are proud of the products that they've spent this entire, season crafting. And I think that was something that we saw earlier on with some of the different contests, how there would be brands that would purchase wholesale from a farmer and slap their brand on it. And then they win all these awards. You're like, wait a second. Like, the farmer spent 4 months with that plant.
Yeah.
Getting it to the point that it has the quality. And so we saw an opportunity to kind of help celebrate the farmer. And that's kind of how Humboldt Family Farms, came to be. And we've got an incredible team that I'm honored and proud to work with, from the farmers all the way through our co-packing facility here in Arcata, our distribution channels, and of course our retailers. We couldn't do it without the retailers. And so we try to maintain authenticity through the supply chain. And I'm just honored that people are enjoying the products the way that they are, and we're able to scale as quickly as we are. And we have a big summer planned of a whole variety of events to come out and say hello to the people and just hear firsthand what their experience is with cannabis in general, but also our products. So we're honored to be able to share those.
I just think it's a wonderful melding of what the industry is supposed to be. Like, we see, I know that, you in a former life, you were in a non-cannabis touching business. Mm-hmm. And as we see the growth of this industry and movement, it's incredibly important that people who have those skills come in and lend a hand to this and really help us grow up as an industry. Mm-hmm. And you don't bring the bad habits that some people do from industry, because we see that as well. Also, I think that having the connections with the farmers and telling the farmers' stories and featuring the farmers on their flower helps educate the public, because we can kind of dehumanize cannabis in a way. I mean, it becomes, when we get into the language of like CPG, we lose the story of the flower and the fact that it's agriculture and that it's a plant, that it must be cultivated. It's not being made in a factory. And I think part of that also lends to a call to grounding within ourselves and figuring out what works well for us and experiencing it kind of with almost the delight as when you go to a farmer's market and you pick up some beautiful tomatoes or berries or whatever's in season.
Yeah. Or homemade pie.
Yeah.
you can get an industrial pie, or you can have a homemade pie, and that is exactly the flavor that we're trying to share
Yeah.
through this project. And
I love that. I love that. I mean, that's the greatest hope for farmers everywhere, I think, is to be able to have good partnerships so that they can do what they do best, which is cultivation, and then have the partnerships so that you do get out to market. You're able to tell the stories. People are able to benefit from these beautiful flowers that, do amazing things with our bodies. And that's, I mean, when you're having events this year, what's going on with that?
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all.
We've got some great events, and I think just to finish that last topic is it is every industry has its bad players, but I think that we've kissed a lot of frogs along the way, and I think that really it's about working with good people that are honest, transparent, and have the best interest for a successful long-term vision of cannabis. And I think that kind of having that kindness in our business relationships is something that has gotten us really far. We really try to work with people that we enjoy spending time with, because we're spending a lot of time with these people, and that's from the farmers through our entire supply chain. And it's an honor to be working with those people. And now looking at the opportunities that present themselves, I feel like, the hard work is starting to pay off, and we have a great summer of events that we have lined up. We'll be at Cali Roots next weekend, which I think by the time this podcast probably airs will be in the past. But we do Cali Roots, and that's down in Monterey. And then that will lead into, we'll be at Benzinga in Chicago, into the State Fair. So we'll be at the State Fair for 10 days in July. So we're super excited about that. And then moving into, we've got a couple of events happening in August with Outside Lands. And then we've got Dead & Co. happening in Golden Gate Park. So I'm hoping there will be some sort of a cannabis experience there. We'll remains to be seen, but I hope that we're able to support that event as well.
That's exciting. I love that. I love that.
And I think providing an experience to people, and it's one of the things I love about doing these events is I try not to just be like pushing cannabis, but it's like, how do we create a way that people can have a positive experience? And that's one of the things I love, bringing our glass blowers on tour to some of these events to provide an experience. Like glass and cannabis flower clearly goes hand in hand, has forever. But a lot of people have never seen anybody blow glass before. And so that was something that we started last year, and people have been really embracing some of those types of projects. Art also. We do a lot of fun events with Hate Street Art Center. We did posters on the back, people can stand up and print their own poster off the back of a bike on this little mobile printing press. And so I think it's just kind of having fun with cannabis again. And that's something that I love doing these events with, and connecting with the people out there that are consuming our products and enjoying the industry. So
yeah, I love the Hate Street Art Center. Kelly is an amazing executive director.
Awesome.
She's
Everybody
awesome.
Involved there.
Yeah, but I mean, I think all these activations really show like the reason that a lot of us are here. It's I found like if you told me 15 years ago I'd be doing this, I'd tell you were nuts. But what I saw when I stepped into this space was, the helping patients, the social justice side of it. This gets people engaged in policy because if somebody is really interested in how this exciting new turn with legalizations, they get to understand how this is happening. But it also, for me, especially during the 215 days, as somebody who came out of corporate, was not happy with it, went into nonprofit. It really, to me, it illustrated a new way of being able to do business in a very conscious, very compassionate way, where we give back to the community. We delve into art. We delve into the social aspects. It's you can create abundance with heart, and I think that that's a huge part of what you're doing, which is we need more of that. We need more of that in not only in cannabis but just in the world. I mean, we have a lot of people who are very, very wealthy, and we have a lot of people who are struggling, and we can even that out and have enough for everybody. Call me idealistic, but I mean, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you
for
too.
all the hard work. Yeah, it's a lot of fun working together, and I always love chatting with you.
Oh, same. We always have so many good things to talk about. And, as we're kind of getting towards the end of our hour, like, what are some things that you're excited and hopeful about?
I think we mentioned it earlier. I think just this normalization, I think people's mindsets, we've been hiding for so long. And I think that it has been kind of a tricky, like mental, emotional shift for us to come from this place where you don't talk about it with anyone, right? Not even with family, like of that, this was not that long ago. This was, 10, 15 years ago, maybe at most, where it was very secretive. And now being behind a brand where I'm like, hey, Humboldt Family Farms, like, come see, it's like, it's just kind of a weird shift. But I think that seeing the normalization and the benefits that people are seeing from this plant firsthand has been something that I've been really excited about. I think that the innovation that is happening is also in products, things like, it takes, a couple years to create a new strain when you go through all the pheno hunting and all that stuff. Or it takes me 30 seconds at my farm in a grinder to combine two things. So I think there's like that I think there's a lot of creativity that is still happening in cannabis. We're still such a young industry. And so I think I'm really excited to see, federal legalization. I hope to see sooner than later. I think that'll open up a lot of challenges, banking and all those types of things. But I'm incredibly positive. I think that the Emerald Triangle has the ability to be here, to support the farmers that have been doing this for so long. I don't know what that looks like, but that's what gets me out of bed every morning, is trying to create solutions to some of the challenges that we're facing as small farmers. And it's an honor to represent them as best I can. And so I'm excited for a lot of the different things that are happening, not just here over the course of this next couple months in the summer, but I think long term. I think that people are starting to realize the power and the magic of this plant, and it's an honor to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think that the constant outreach and the normalization is a huge part of that, because as we know, we have a lot of challenges policy wise, and some of it is still residual stigma. Some of it is the underrepresentation of the average cannabis consumer. And so there isn't as much perhaps mindfulness with some of the choices that have been made, because we're hearing more of the voices of people who are fearful and maybe not as well educated on the reality of what we're working with. And I think that activations and education and outreach is a huge way of not only turning people onto the possibilities, but making people feel more comfortable about coming out and saying, hey, person who wants my vote for their job, I pay taxes, I contribute to society, I use cannabis, and guess what? I vote. So think of me when, these bills are coming down, like, how is this going to affect your constituents? And I'm really hoping that we get more into those conversations, because we have more and more people that are engaging, and, with compassion towards people who are frightened of cannabis and hemp and what it's doing to our society, being able to sit down with them and have them have, even if they choose not to partake, have better experiences through educating them compassionately so that they can understand, hey, as an industry, we care about public safety. We care about your families. let's meet in the middle and create good policy that serves everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we have an exciting future. So.
Yeah. And for people,
I'm excited to be on this journey together.
Yeah, I know. I mean, think about it. Like even 10 years from now, when we sit down again and and I mean, you and I will talk way more much in between that time. But I mean, the reflections of how things will be. I mean, I think about even in 2012, how different the landscape was than it is now, and how much we've learned, and how many people have come and gone. It really takes my breath away sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, from the enforcement, angle all the way down to, just the business side of it. Everything it's a whirlwind when you think back on time on back into the early 2000s and late 90s, what we were faced with then compared to now.
Yeah.
And so that is one of the nice things is I think, with having, a legal business in the state of California with cannabis is something that I think that there is that anxiety of the cop's not going to kick in my door tomorrow morning and I'm not going to get pulled over for some ridiculous traffic violation just because they want to search my car because I have dreadlocks or a beard or something like that. And I think that honestly, that part of it is missed sometimes, that when you think back on time of what we had to deal with, which is why we were so secretive with it, and now this collaboration has been really a pleasure to kind of help people talk about some of those experiences. I mean, people still have, it's real. The PTSD that people are dealing with is no joke. And I think having a platform that people can share those experiences is healing. And it now gives them a sense of pride that they've gone through it. And I think being able to share those stories is critically important as we move into the future.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And to ensure that it doesn't happen again. I mean, it's just so incredibly impactful. And another thing that fuels me is that we're constantly learning. I mean, I think about some of the things that I thought were truths about what we do when I first started that have been disproven or changed somewhat. And it's just the other day, they had found a new cannabinoid that, along with some other, components of cannabis, that the cannabinoid didn't show to be good for certain cancers, but some of the other components did. And now they're like, we have this new cannabinoid that we didn't know anything about. Now we have to figure out what this does. Parts of the plant that we thought were inert that are much more active than we could ever know. Where will we be 10 years from now around that? And I hope that not only are we creating safe access for people who want to use it just as adults, however they want to do it, but like you said earlier, not forgetting the fact that this is therapeutic and that we can use this in lieu of pharmaceuticals that, may have side effects that you have to take yet another pharmaceutical to help with. For people who want to follow the company on social media, see what's going on, check out activations, how do they do that?
Sure. So at Humboldt Family Farms, all one word. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn. Meta's not incredibly friendly with us, so a lot of times our backup profile comes up. But yeah, at Humboldt Family Farms, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And we're at all the different events, like I mentioned, throughout the summer. Come say hello. We'd love to see you. State fairs is it's a hoot. It is a good time. There's some great bands playing, and of course, all of the other events as well. And we'll have some fun special drops. But all of that can be found through our social media platforms.
Awesome. I'm really excited. I'm judging this year, so I'm really excited to see you there and to just check out all the great flowers and connect with all the farmers. They're some of my most favorite people.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the things I do love the most about some of these events is that even though, being up in Humboldt, but a lot of the farmers, we don't see each other very often up here, but we go to these events and it's like this reunion of not just the farmers here in Humboldt and Emerald Triangle, but everyone from industry across the state. And it's one of my favorite things about the events.
Yeah, it's kind of
I
like
look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, me too. It's every time we all get together, it's like a homecoming in many ways.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. Sara, thank you so much for having me on, and I wish you and Jeff the best, and I can't wait to see you next time.
Oh, thank you so much, my friend. I thank you for spending time with me. It's always a joy talking with you, and I can't wait to see you in person again.
Yeah, come on up to Humboldt.
We'll do. Oh, we'll be up this summer.
That sounds great. All right. Thanks, Sara.
Thank you.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.